What do the BRICS nations, and you, the American citizen, have in common? Once you strip out all the government data and rhetoric, the actual lived experience of everyday Americans dealing with true inflation is troubling. Since 1971, when the U.S. leadership decoupled the dollar from its golden chaperone, the U.S. national policy has weaponized the dollar as leverage in international trade. The unfair use of this leverage against trading partners, exporting U.S. inflation by forcing countries to hold depreciating dollars in reserve, the ever-growing national debt, and excessive money printing is just scratching the surface. To help make sense of this present economic environment, we will hear from macro analyst and investor Lyn Alden, economic analyst and author Mike Maloney, author and researcher G Edward Griffin, and economist and investor Keith Weiner.
If you own a dollar balance, you are a creditor, and your choice is only to be a creditor of a commercial bank. And if you think commercial banks are transparent and sound, then maybe you can choose that. Or you can be a creditor of the Fed. You can have paper cash that you hoard under your mattress, and then you're a creditor to the Fed directly. Or you can be a creditor to the Treasury and buy Treasury bonds. Of course, there's a little game between the Treasury and the Fed. The Fed is just like a bank. It issues its liability, which is the Federal Reserve note, in order to fund its portfolio of assets, which is primarily the Treasury bond. But the Treasury bond is payable only in terms of Federal Reserve notes, which are backed by Treasury bonds, which are payable in terms of Federal Reserve notes. So it's a circular scheme, and it's basically monetary counterfeiting. If you have a dollar balance calling that money, you are a creditor in this system that's based on counterfeiting at its root.
It is sometimes amazing that we haven't experienced more inflation than we have. If they keep expanding the money supply so vastly, why aren't our prices growing faster than they really are? And the answer is that a good chunk of the money that the Fed created has been shipped overseas. I remember early in my research, I heard this expression that the Americans have exported their inflation. I thought, what is that? How can you export your inflation? Put it in a box and send it out? What do you do? Well, now I understand. You export your inflation by simply sending all these dollars that you created to these other countries, and then they send you their refrigerators and their cars and whatever, their TV sets. So you get hardware and they get little pieces of paper. It's a great deal for the American people for a while. Sooner or later, all of those pigeons come home to roost. When the time comes, as it looks like it's now coming, when the rest of the world is saying, we don't want to play this game anymore. Uncle Sam's dollars are just becoming worthless. There are too many of them. We've got to find something else other than American dollars. Then those dollars start to come back to America. People say, we don't want them anymore. What do we do with them? Once this revs up, and we've got this little trickle of money coming back that we previously exported, once it becomes a flood and it starts to rush back, now we are getting our former exported inflation brought back to us, and then we'll see the quantity of money inside the United States grow much more rapidly even than the Federal Reserve can create it, because we're getting a previous money back. And that's when we will really see the tanking of the US dollar in terms of what it will buy.
Benefits from having the reserve currency status are pretty linear, so they're about the same now as they were 50 years ago, whereas the costs of maintaining the system get a little bit more every year. It's not that I think the US should purposely give it up. It's that I think that the problem is that countries often assume that if they start losing it, they have to keep fighting to keep it. Probably the biggest downside we'd see in that kind of more multipolar world is that the US would basically have higher inflation than we otherwise would in this system. Global military reach of the United States would be impaired if it was no longer the global reserve currency status. And that's why in the book I kind of separate America the empire versus America the country.
And what's really interesting, if you study history, there comes a time where the public, the mass psyche of the country and the world, starts to sense the currency debasement. Everybody should be able to feel it now. You go to the grocery store, you go to the gas station, you can feel that there's a currency debasement going on. Everything's costing more. Your currency is losing purchasing power. And as the public starts to wake up, gold and silver go through the roof, and they automatically revalue themselves when the public wakes up, and they catch up to all the currency that's been produced.
Policymakers, institutions, and governments may decide the fate of our currency. It is our responsibility to safeguard the wealth we have, because no one else is going to do it for us. If you are interested in protecting your retirement savings and preserving your purchasing power through a tax-deferred gold IRA, see the links in the video description. To attend a free gold education webinar held by Augusta Precious Metals, see the link in the video description. Thank you for watching.